Through brutal betrayal, rose an army, fighting for a world where no soul suffers in silence. From the group that brought you Desmond's Law, join us as we shield every paw from cruelty. Welcome to the Desmond's Army podcast, Animal Advocacy Unleashed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Desmond's Army podcast. My name is Matt Caron, and I'll be your host. And today, as usual, I'm joined by Zilla Cannamela, the president of Desmond's Army. Z, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's hard to believe that we're in episode 5. We're kind of getting in a groove with this thing, aren't we?
Right? I can't believe it's episode 5 either.
It's fun. And there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot that we've been doing in Desmond's Army. That court calendar, busy as ever, right?
It's
Unfortunately, it's full.
Yeah.
So, we've had 4 episodes before this, and we want to welcome everybody in. If this is your first time joining us, you don't have to watch from the beginning. Every episode is its own unique story. You can jump right in and you can watch all the rest of them after this. We should let everybody know that we are streaming live on demand. We're on every platform that you can think of: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, but we're on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Just search for Desmond's Army. We would love to hear what you think about our program. So we have a dedicated email called desmondspodcast@gmail.com. That's desmondspodcast@gmail.com. You can send us your feedback there. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, any questions that you have or topics that you'd like us to cover, and we will try and get to all of that. So we are excited today to have a conversation about a really important but also really difficult case, Zilla, and this is the Sarah Smolak case. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about who we're going to be talking with in just a moment and what this case is all about.
We'll be talking with Michele Walsh from AMA Rescue. She is the one who reported Marshmallow missing. But this case is incredibly involved. There's a lot of facets. There's twists. There's turns. I mean, there is so much to this case, so many layers to this case.
It's kind of like an onion, and we're still peeling it, right?
Yeah, and we're still peeling it. Yeah.
And Marshmallow, for those people who don't know, is a dog, right? And the dog who is missing, and the dog that sort of exposed Sarah Smolak for who she is, right? Thanks to Michele and AMA Animal Rescue. So let's bring her on. This is Michele Walsh. She is a longtime board member of AMA Animal Rescue based in Brooklyn, New York, and they are doing yeoman's work when it comes to helping animals, rescuing animals, and they were instrumental in bringing transparency and accountability in the Smolak case. So let me unhide Michele.
And Michele is brilliant.
Hi, Michele.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Matt. Hi, Zilla.
Hi, Michele.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And, there's a lot of people, obviously, within the Desmond's Army membership and AMA Animal Rescue and the animal advocacy community who've been following this case from the very beginning and who know the general details. But then there are other people who maybe haven't heard about it on the news or haven't been following it as closely and don't know. So for those people, I'd like to kind of start chronologically at the beginning where this story begins and bring us up to current day. Obviously, we're still following it and it's developing almost day by day here. But so, Michele, where does this story begin? And how did AMA Animal Rescue become involved?
Firstly, let me just say thank you, Matt, Zilla. Thank you for having us on your podcast. Desmond's Army has been instrumental in all of the facets and whips and turns, as Zilla said, in this case. And so thank you for taking the time and having us on the show. For those of you who don't know, AMA Animal Rescue, we are a Brooklyn, New York based rescue. We've been around for over a decade and focus on cases of abuse, neglect, medical, all sorts of cases right in the heart of New York City. And our worlds collided with Connecticut with the case of Marshmallow, who is a pit bull that we rescued in December of 2023. He was found by a wonderful woman on the streets of Brooklyn with a stab wound to his head, shivering in the cold. And she scooped him right up and contacted us. And of course, we couldn't say no. And we welcomed Marshmallow to the AMA family. Marshmallow had been with us for almost a year. A young pit bull, a lot of energy, a really great, goofy guy, beautiful white pit bull with a little teardrop marking over his left eye. And fast forward almost a year, it was December of 2024, and we were closing our shelter for about a month. We do that annually to make certain repairs in the shelter and give our volunteers a break. And we were looking for a foster just for 1 month who could take care of Marshmallow, and applied a woman by the name of Sarah Smolak, who came with excellent references, seemed very experienced, very knowledgeable, told us that Marshmallow was going to receive care and training, and he would have tons of time to play outside in Connecticut, in the suburbs of Connecticut, if you will. And we were so excited. We thought it was a great match, and we followed our protocol. We followed our process, which is very, very thorough. And she checked out. She signed a foster agreement with us, as we do in every case for all of our animals. And Marshmallow went to Norwalk, Connecticut on December 6th, 2024. And that is the last time we ever saw him. During that period.
And Michele, let me just ask you, and I don't want to interrupt you, but just so we're clear, so Marshmallow, again, going back to, this is a dog that you initially picked up because the dog had evidence to support that it was abused previously. Like you said, a stab wound, right?
A stab wound to his head, Matt.
So the dog already was abused. You're giving it to who you thought and who you vetted to be a reputable person who could give this dog a better life.
Correct.
And then subsequently something happens to Marshmallow. And to this day, we really don't know what happened to Marshmallow. But with your process for vetting Sarah Smolak, I mean, no red flags?
No red flags. In fact, beautiful flags, evidence of history of being a trainer and understanding dog behavior. And she passed our interview with flying colors. She knew exactly what to say, Matt. We thought it was a great home, and we've been doing this for a long time.
Okay. So you give Marshmallow to Sarah Smolak, and then how did you find out that something wasn't right? What was the first time?
For the first couple of weeks, she was sending us updates and photos and videos, and everything was great. But a couple of weeks in, the communication became less and less. We had asked for pictures and videos. She would make up excuses, and this is all via text message documented. She would make up one excuse after another. First she was sick, then she got injured, then it was something else. And we continued to follow up and follow up. She then told us that she wanted to submit a formal application to adopt Marshmallow. So that's different than a foster process. So she completed the application to adopt him and sent that paperwork to us. And as part of our normal process, we require all adoptions to be done on site at our shelter in Brooklyn, New York, with one of our founders. Once she was told that information, she stopped communicating with us.
Wow.
And just to clarify, she at the time lived in Norwalk, Connecticut, which is where Marshmallow was dropped off. During this process, she had moved. And once she moved to Winstead. We didn't know where she was. We only found her a month later when she had moved up to Winstead, Connecticut. We were able to flag the closing on her home in Winstead, and that's where we figured out where Marshmallow was. And we contacted the police immediately, who came to do a well visit. But even on that day, she claimed that Marshmallow was not there. She told police officers that she returned Marshmallow to the rescue, which she had not. We wouldn't be here today if that was the case. And she told other people who were involved with Marshmallow, like his finder, right? The person who found him back in Brooklyn in December, that Marshmallow had cancer and he needed to be euthanized. She also told people that not only did she give him back to us and that he had cancer, but a myriad of different stories, none of which were true. And we still don't know to date what happened.
So based on what you just said, it sounds like something happened to Marshmallow relatively quickly after she adopted him, right? I mean, because you said it was just a matter of weeks before she kind of stopped communicating.
That is correct. So he went up there December 6th. She stopped communicating shortly after the new year.
And so Michele or Zilla, anyone who wants to update us, That's the initial thing that happened. Marshmallow goes missing. From there, this case gets much, much bigger. And it's sort of, we describe it as an onion, or its spider legs out, right? So how did this case go from one missing dog, Marshmallow, to breaking wide open? And now we know there's a total of 42 counts of animal abuse. How do we make that leap?
We posted a post, and I think, Zilla, that's how you saw the case. Once Marshmallow went missing and the police told us that she said she never had him and that she never signed a foster contract, which she did, we made a post saying that this woman, Sarah Smolak, took our dog to foster and never returned him. And if anybody had any information, to please contact us. And that just opened the floodgates.
Well, there was that, and then Pancake, who I believe she reported missing, and wound up at the vet, and she refused to pay the vet to do what was needed to be done. I believe it was a blockage. And no, you guys reported Pancake missing. Is that correct?
What happened was, after our first post, all of these individual owners and rescues started contacting us and telling us about their experiences with Sarah Smolak. And we found out very quickly that there were several rescues who were pulling dogs out of there in horrific condition. And
Because the vet scanned the dog.
Yeah.
Scanned
So that's
Pancake
a dog
and-
from
and
another
found-
rescue.
and found that the dog had been missing.
Yes, so the rescue reported Pancake missing. You're absolutely right. After they heard about our case, and all of the misinformation started getting spread on social media like wildfire, and they did report Pancake's microchip as missing. My understanding in reading the warrant is that Smolak presented Pancake at a veterinary hospital due to an obstruction, and when they scanned Pancake for a microchip, that microchip popped as stolen dog. From there, the police were called, arrived on the scene, and more layers of the onions started peeling back.
Michele, you had just mentioned a little bit ago that all of these rescues subsequently started reaching out to you and telling you their horror stories about working with Sarah Smolak, which begs the question, how was she allowed to continue doing what she was doing for so long? Nobody prior to you guys reported any
They did.
situation?
Oh, they certainly did. When we FOIA'd all of the police reports prior to that time, so we're now into March of 2025, we did a FOIA, and we found multiple complaints coming out of the Norwalk jurisdiction, where she lived for many years, complaint after complaint of a very similar pattern of behavior from private owners and from rescues. And the common thread in those reports was that there were all of these complaints and the things that she was doing, but it would almost seem that it was never enough to actually get charges filed. Somehow she seemed to wiggle right out of it.
Like Teflon. And I want to read a report from a recent newspaper article here in Connecticut. The quote is, "The arrest came weeks after animal welfare groups and rescues launched a social media and email campaign urging state officials, local police, and media to conduct an investigation." You know, I just got to be honest, that makes me really mad. Anytime the people have to tell public officials to get off their butts and do their jobs, that's a problem.
It is a problem. And Norwalk got the memo over and over and over again. Those reports go back to 2018, right, through 2025. And there were never any charges filed or arrests made. Smolak moved to Winstead, Connecticut in February of 2025. And we believe Marshmallow moved there with her. The Winstead, or the Winchester Police Department, was actually the ones that we filed a complaint once we figured out where she lived. And they were the ones who investigated and made the first series of arrests, Pancake being the first. And I think with the pressure and everything that was happening in Winchester, and all of these dogs and other rescues coming forward and filing complaints with the police department, and if you look at those warrants for Pancake and Seraphine and a number of other dogs that are listed in those warrants, again, it was that same pattern of behavior. And she was ultimately charged with 38 counts of cruelty just up in Winstead, Connecticut. In parallel, There was still activity in Norwalk when she had moved to Winstead. She trashed her landlord's home in Norwalk, and the landlord filed charges against her there.
So we should make this clear for everyone. So, because it is confusing, right? There's a lot of different jurisdictions involved. So the crimes occurred in Winstead and Norwalk.
Correct.
She's being brought through the judicial system in Torrington and Stamford. Do I have that right?
Correct.
That's right.
Okay. So again, go back to the Onion. We know Marshmallow started it all, and then the other dog, what was the other dog's name?
Pancake.
Pancake. And now we're talking 42 counts. So the investigators clearly go in, they finally start doing their job, and you basically uncover a den of abuse, right?
That's right. 38 counts of cruelty in the Torrington judicial jurisdiction, 4 counts of animal cruelty in Stamford, in that jurisdiction.
So what did they discover in that house?
That house, they sustained over $100,000 in damages, urine and feces all over the house, urine going through the floorboards all the way down to the basement, that they had to tear out floors and walls in the entire home to renovate it. The damage was so extensive. Be happy to share some photos with you guys. The damage was so extensive. It took people in hazmat suits for months to clear out that house and make it sustainable for life.
And I'd like to add that they were not allowed, the owners were not allowed on the property.
The owners reported that they tried to access the property multiple times, and Smolak refused access when she ultimately moved out in February of 2025. And they came in and saw, I'll never forget what the landlord said to me. She said, it's less about the damage, although the damage was extensive, but what haunts her at night are the images of what those animals, what those dogs went through in this house of horrors.
And Zilla, talk about how someone goes from being a breeder, a boarder, a foster to an abuser. I mean, how does that happen?
Well, how do we enter the minds of these people? I mean, we're no psychologists or psychiatrists, but I think initially they may think they're doing good and switch flips, and it seems as though she had the upstairs dogs, which were in okay shape, and then the bottom basement dogs that were neglected, starved, in horrific condition. And who can say out of sight, out of mind? I don't think so. I think that this is an individual that knows right from wrong, and we don't know. I mean, a switch flips and something just goes horribly wrong, and
Did they
these
ever
dogs
find
are horribly neglected and abused.
did they ever find any dead dogs in the house?
No, the landlord actually contacted the Norwalk ACOs, who did a fantastic job. They came to the house and searched through the whole house and did not find any evidence of alive or dead dogs. There were some crates, and you could see the markings on the floor from the crates with all the urine around it. It was just burned through the floor. There were some collars, but no evidence of Marshmallow or any other dog. So
Can we
And
talk about the puppies?
we can talk about the puppies.
Okay. There was a mama dog, and how many puppies, Michelle? Was it 6?
Well, there were several litters of puppies. So I think you're talking about Tammy and her puppies. And Tammy is a charge that she faces down in the Stamford jurisdiction. Tammy was rescued from a municipal shelter in Texas, where the euthanasia rates are very high, and a rescue brought them in from Texas via transport to be fostered by Sarah Smolak. And the puppies just started dying one at a time. And at first the rescue just thought, it's unfortunate, but it does happen in the rescue world, right? There are healthy litters and not so healthy litters, but it was one at a time, one at a time, one at a time until the whole litter was gone. She allowed the rescue to actually come and pick Tammy back up from her. And she told that rescue that the puppies died from pneumonia and that she had sent for an autopsy through the Norwalk ACO, because she lived in Norwalk at the time, and that the ACOs told her that per the necropsy reports that it was pneumonia. The ACOs in Norwalk never ever processed any puppies from Sarah Smolak, nor did they know about these puppies, nor did they send for necropsy because she never told.
Wow. That's another layer. Wow. So they all died, all of them.
All of them.
Tell me about David Reid. I saw that he was somehow connected to this case and also charged, but I
Yes.
didn't read any more in depth than that. So I wanted to ask you
We're
both.
still in the first layer, so it's a great time for that question. But David Reid was charged with just the one count of animal cruelty for Pancake specifically. So Pancake, this was March of 2025, where Pancake had an obstruction, and Sarah Smolak brought Pancake to the vet, where they scanned for the chip that came up as stolen. And so when the police were called, according to that warrant, Sarah Smolak told the Canton ACO that Pancake was actually adopted from this rescue to David Reid and presented them with an adoption application that the rescue stated was a forgery. They never adopted that dog to David Reid. My understanding is David Reid was her boyfriend at the time, and he was charged with the cruelty to Pancake as he was listed as the adopter for that dog.
Got it. Okay. I wasn't sure about that connection. So now bring us into that second layer. What is this? What is the second layer?
So it started with Pancake, and then it was warrant after warrant. So over a period of almost 2 years, she was charged in 2 jurisdictions with 42 counts of cruelty, all for different dogs, both in the Stamford and Torrington. So there were 38 counts altogether in Winstead. Many of those counts were, once the warrants were issued for Pancake and Seraphine, she had dozens of dogs in her home. Winchester Police in March of last year, 2025, obtained a warrant to do a search and seizure of all of the animals from her home. 27 dogs were pulled out by police, some of which she claimed were hers. There were 27, I believe 27 dogs that were seized from her home, and several of those dogs were boarders that she returned to the owners, but the conditions that the dogs were in accordance with the warrants and the body cam footage, which we've reviewed, we've FOIA'd those materials, they were living in their excrement, in urine and feces. All the dogs consistently have similar type of wounds on their hocks and on their butt bones and on their hip joints. Their fur, their legs are stained with urine and feces. I believe 4 of the dogs that were seized from the home had to be hospitalized because the e-collars were embedded in their necks so tight. And to fast forward a little before we jump to Stamford, she did relinquish some of those dogs, and I think we can talk a little bit more about that when we come full circle in the timeline here. And she relinquished some, but continued to fight to keep ownership of some of the other dogs. And while this is all happening in the Torrington Judicial District, more victims now start coming forward in Stamford. So you had the landlord, and she was charged with criminal damage to the property for that Norwalk home, as well as larceny. And then there were 4 more cases in Stamford that she was charged with, 4 more dogs that came from different rescues, all different rescues from all over, from Connecticut, from New York, from Texas. People all over the country have been affected by
And
this
see,
case.
not only is this complicated, but it seems to me to be inefficient. I mean, when you have multiple charges across multiple judicial districts, you're dealing with different judges who apply the law in different ways. And I know that the courts have, I don't want to say treated her differently based on the jurisdiction of the judge, but I mean, it's discretionary when you involve all these people. Zilla, I wanted to ask you, you've seen a lot of cases, obviously, hundreds, thousands in Desmond's Army. How does the Sarah Smolak case compare? Is it one that you've never seen before?
Yeah, this has more layers to it than what we've ever seen. This case is so complicated, so complex, with, again, so many different facets and, things that have happened that shouldn't have happened or, possibly could have been avoided. But
I mean, people drop the ball.
The ball has been dropped multiple times. I'm not sure how deeply we can go into this.
We're going deep.
Well, the case is still open,
The
Matt.
case is still open.
Yeah.
So,
well, and innocent until proven guilty, right?
And we want to do what's best for the remaining dogs. The dogs that have not found homes yet, that are in foster.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about this before, Zilla, but when it comes to Marshmallow specifically, she's not charged with animal abuse. She's charged with theft,
Larceny.
right?
Correct.
Theft, larceny. And we all know, because we've talked about it, that's because animals are considered property, right? So they have to consider it a theft. If it was a person, it'd be kidnapping or whatever.
But one of the things I don't understand about this case, where one of the balls were dropped, was when she was asked by the court to produce Marshmallow, she never showed up. She never even showed up, and nothing happened. There was
nothing
no
happened
contempt.
yet.
Okay.
And so, Matt, what Zilla's talking about is the civil case that we, Animal Rescue, filed against Sarah Smolak for replevin of Marshmallow. And the findings in that case were such that the judge ordered that Sarah Smolak return Marshmallow to AMA Animal Rescue, and she failed to do so. There was a deadline, and there was a location and a date. It was the Winchester Police Department parking lot. Over the summer in July, I'd have to look at the date, where we stood in that parking lot. I stood in that parking lot and waited for him to be returned. She never showed up, and her lawyer never showed up either. We did file a subsequent motion to hold her in contempt of court, but we wound up temporarily putting a stay in the case as a result, because she's charged criminally. She certainly has the right to remain silent. This is still America, and she would never tell us, or we wouldn't be able to depose her in terms of what happened with Marshmallow. So we've decided to wait until the outcome of the criminal case to continue on, our fight on the civil side of the house here, in terms of the replevin of Marshmallow and not returning him to us when she was most certainly ordered to do so.
Okay. So now let's get into the meat and potatoes of it, right? So she was arrested, I believe was it a total of 8 times, right?
Yes.
Over the course of all this. So go ahead, Michele. Where does it really turn ugly?
It's been ugly from day one, Matt.
Yeah.
It just gets uglier as we go along. So we talked about her ultimate charges in Winstead were, the 30 counts of animal cruelty and the larceny of Marshmallow. And then in Stamford, 4 counts of animal cruelty and the property damage and larceny of the house. Most recently, another victim came forward, a family with a dog, a beautiful puppy who was staying with Smolak for 1 week while they went on vacation. And again, the same pattern of behavior, the incredible weight loss, the wounds on his underbelly and his mouth, and the raging infection that he sustained. The dog lost 20 pounds in a matter of a week. When they reported it, it was just a few days outside of the statute of limitations. Otherwise, I would imagine that this would have been yet another warrant. But it was just a week outside the statute of limitations of 1 year for misdemeanor animal cruelty. So this was new. And so it still continues. And then just last week, she was arrested again for violating her conditions of release, where she was ordered in both jurisdictions multiple times that she could not possess animals. And we FOIA'd the warrant, and the warrant showed that she had 2 cats and a turtle in her home.
Well, so how did they find that out? They must have went to her house. Was it like a welfare check or something?
There was a welfare check made. And upon the welfare check, they saw these animals. So after all of these arrests and all of these charges and explicit orders from the court to not have animals, she still continues this pattern of behavior.
So that's what prompted the bail to be raised.
Yeah.
Which I think is what,
and I'd just like to,
yeah.
I'd just like to add that in all this, and I know I'm shooting way ahead, but in all this, allegedly, this pattern of behavior shows that she will continue after this. This is not a one-off happening. And the diversionary programs that have been applied for, one of the stipulations is that whoever applies for it might be eligible if they're not likely to reoffend. And here we are.
Yeah, she originally applied for accelerated rehabilitation, and then now she's applying for a different diversionary program, right? That's more
Yeah, the
supervisory.
supervised.
Yeah. Okay.
Diversion program.
I mean, Zilla, let me ask you this, and I'm in the easy position of asking the questions. You're in the hard position of having to answer them, so you can decline. But do you think that the courts are treating Sarah Smolak the same way they would treat if this was a man? I mean, just food for thought. I don't know that. Maybe we don't know the answer, but certainly
I would say that one of the courts is softer than the others. One court, you almost think they want to give her a hug out the door. And the other court seems to see the bigger picture and see through, what's really going on.
Well, because only one court raised the bail, right? The other one
Allegedly.
didn't.
Going on.
Yeah.
Stanford
only one court
raised the bail to $450,000 from $120,000 as a result of the violations of the conditions of release. So that was in Stanford, and we were in court for Torrington. The judge who signed the warrant put $10,000 on that one.
There's another quote here that goes to what you just said. I believe it's the Torrington judge, Prolesky. Is that his
Correct.
name? He said he didn't want to raise her bond, but would if he had to. Quote, no other alternative. So, yeah, I really don't want to do it.
What is it going to take? Is it going to take more missing animals, dead animals, animals having to be carried out and hospitalized for weeks, multiple animals who needed extensive surgery after the time spent with Smolak?
Okay, so now let's advance the story, right? I really want to get to this part where all these abused animals they're rehabilitated, and now they're at the point where they can be fostered out again. And I know there was a meeting just a couple of weeks ago in Winchester, and Desmond's Army was front and center there, along with animal advocate agencies and organizations from across the state and obviously New York. And everybody had a 3-minute segment where you could sort of read out this story. So what we've come to learn, right, is that many of these fosters for the animals have associations and connections with Sarah Smolak, right, Z?
I'm sorry.
So many of these fosters have associations and connections with Sarah Smolak, right?
Yes.
Talk a little bit
Yes.
about that.
Well, I mean, Bikers Against Animal Cruelty was there, and this is one of the things they do. We tend to stand shoulder to shoulder with them in many, many things. But of course AMA was there, and they have firsthand. There were some fosters there, people that fostered that are fostering some of the dogs currently. So yeah, I mean, people have a vested interest, and they were there to make sure that these dogs go to appropriate homes.
What did the town decide to do?
They haven't yet.
They haven't yet.
We're still waiting for the outcome. And what I can tell you is that we became aware of several dogs that were placed in foster. So some of the dogs that were seized from her home, Sarah Smolak did relinquish, and some of them she did not. And for that subset of those that she did not relinquish were to be placed into safe foster homes until the outcome of the criminal case. And we had learned last year that several of those dogs were placed into foster homes that were specifically proposed by Sarah Smolak. And we raised that issue with the town, and the town had become aware of that issue. And to date, our understanding is that those dogs, several of those dogs, not all of them, are still with those associates. And so we did go to the town to present all of the information and documentation that indicates what we said. Sarah Smolak has filed a new stipulation, which we're waiting on the court's ruling for, where she's relinquishing the rest of the dogs, and advocates such as Desmond's Army and Bikers for Animal Cruelty and AMA Animal Rescue and others were there to inform the town and implore the town to please save those dogs and move them to unaffiliated fosters and adopters ultimately, right? And we're Still waiting for the outcome of that. We do know as a result of the meeting, a wonderful rescue called Lucky Dog Refuge that are located out of Stamford has been charged with, or the town has asked for their assistance with vetting applications for adoption for these dogs. So we hope that the town will do the right thing now that they're aware of the issues, and these fosters are specifically listed in police reports as Smolak's options to foster the dogs presented by her own attorney. So it's very clear who these people are, and their association with Miss Smolak. And there are many wonderful adopters that have come forward even during that time wanting to foster and adopt these dogs. So we still are not sure why they were placed with Smolak Associates, and we certainly hope that the town is going to correct that through this process with the adoptions and through Lucky Dog Refuge.
That is our hope.
That is our hope.
And these Smolak Associates, so how many dogs does she still own?
And right now there is a proposed stipulation that's sitting with the civil court judge that she's relinquishing the balance of the dogs. So once that's approved, she will not own any. I believe it's 10 or 11 dogs right now, 11 if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason for recommending certain fosters that she's associated with is why? So she can go there and visit them, or?
We can't imagine why. It was just like that question you asked Zilla of why do animal abusers do what they do?
Right.
I mean, this is a part of it.
It's like a psychological control thing? Is that?
Perhaps.
It seems bizarre.
I don't think that any of us could ever really understand why.
Yeah.
We just know that it is.
I mean, are there going to be more charges in this case? And I guess there could always be more added to her, but are there going to be, do you guys think, more people who are implicated in this case? Because again, I keep going back to, it seems like people dropped the ball.
I mean, we just had a new victim who came forward. She was very active on Rover. So this new victim that was just outside of that statute of limitation, they didn't even know that Sarah Smolak was the same person that they had used as a doggy sitter.
Yeah.
So they just figured it out recently. And something prompted the owner, her recollection of what had happened to their poor dog the year before. And when she contacted us, I said, well, how did you find us? And she said, I Googled. And I said, well, what did you Google? And she said, I Googled Sarah Ann Norwalk because that's all she knew. Her name was Sarah Ann on Rover. She never had her last name. And with all of the information, the media attention, Desmond's Army's huge lift in this, it popped right on Google, and she made the connection that it was the same person that had ultimately allegedly abused her dog too. Would we be surprised? I don't know that I would be surprised if more victims come forward, because there have been so many victims. There's 42 counts, right, that she's been charged with, but there are many other police reports, complaints, and other dogs besides Marshmallow that are still missing to date. So no, I would not be surprised if more victims come out of the woodwork.
Yeah. I mean, just the fact that she's got a preferred foster list. I mean, I don't want to implicate anybody here, but I'm looking at who her preferred fosters are, right? Look into those people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was one out of Georgia.
Okay.
That turned out to, and the town thought she was fine. She's an attorney, right? She's a public defender. And it was discovered on, what was it? Was it Instagram? TikTok, Instagram. It was discovered on Instagram, that she's also a trainer, and her training practices were absolutely barbaric. There's a video and a picture of a dog being beaten with like a split bamboo stick. The table is covered in blood. The dog is bleeding, and this is somebody that they wanted to send one of the dogs to.
Zilla, is this a case where accelerated rehabilitation, or whatever it is, whatever diversionary program she ends up applying for, should that, in your mind, even be considered in a case like this where you have 42 counts of cruelty?
Absolutely not. This is not a diversionary program case at all. I mean, there is dogs that have starved. There is the neglect, the alleged neglect is so severe. And, again, and I'm going to say this again, you cannot walk by a dog and not know it needs sustenance to survive. You cannot walk by a dog sitting in a crate in its own excrement, feces, urine covered, and they have sores all over them. You can't walk by a dog and not know that that dog needs help, that dog needs veterinary care, and that you have left that dog to sit there like that and rot. No, this is not a diversionary case.
Well said. I think that's well said. Michele, just to bring this home, and feel free to interject if we missed a key part of the story. But from the position of AMA Animal Rescue, what have you guys learned from this case so far? Is there anything that you're doing differently now in your, I guess, vetting practices to make sure another Sarah Smolak doesn't slip in?
We always had very strict protocols in terms of our process. We're a New Hope partner with New York City Animal Care and Control. That's our public municipal shelter. We partner closely with them. We have done walkthroughs with them, reviewed their SOPs, implemented so many wonderful processes, and then over the years kind of have improved our own. After this case, we never could have imagined, I will say that in my over a decade of experience, people who come forward to foster or adopt are good people who want to give animals a home. And never in my wildest dreams, if you would have told me a year ago or just over a year ago that this was what was going to happen, I would say, no, it can't be. We look at things differently now, created subgroups. So we have an extra set of eyes on things. So if one person maybe didn't pick up on something, now another person will. We've updated our adoption agreements, our foster agreements, our application processes, our protocols in terms of, we always did home visits. Since COVID, a lot of it has been virtual, but now we do deep dives. So, if you apply, Matt, and we know what your address is, we'll actually do a deep dive and we're going to look at your home and we're going to see that it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom with a basement and a garage. And if you don't show me every square inch of the house, that's it. We never had a reason to mistrust that way. And certainly, we worked on a lot of cruelty cases out of New York over the years, but not to the magnitude of this, and certainly with such intent in so many different animals. So, yes, we have changed our process. We were super tight before. We've made it even tighter. And, every day when I look at the not Sarah Smolak case of what we do for this rescue, we want to make sure we're picking the best home for the animal. But we will never forget this experience. We will never forget how we were manipulated and lied to for the end purpose of, just the sheer fact of being told that this dog that we loved, that we cared for, that came from an abusive past was returned to us. I don't think that's something that we can ever live with, ever again. And so we are watching carefully, and certainly we still want to be able to trust good people, but we've tightened up our processes to make sure that nothing ever falls through the cracks.
And, I'll say it so you don't have to. It's great that you've adjusted, what you're doing or whatever, but at the end of the day, you are an animal rescue, right? And you have limited resources and limited volunteers, and it is up to the authorities, the agencies that have the power to investigate this kind of stuff, to make sure that there are not any more Sarah Smolaks out there. And I guess that's all I have to say. Is there anything about this case that we've missed, left out? And where do we go from here? What's next? I know she's got a court date on April 10th?
Yeah, a couple things coming up. So in April, she's due to appear both in the Torrington Judicial District and Stamford. She did make her application for STP, the Supervised Diversionary Program. So she's set to appear in April. We have, and we will be there, many of the victims, to oppose the application for STP. So we will be there to be heard by the court, which is in the rights of the victims. At that point, it will be up to the judge or the judges in the 2 jurisdictions of the case to make a determination whether they will allow her to partake in this diversionary program or not. And that is the next big step in the case. I think in parallel, we're also waiting to see what the town will do in terms of if and when the judge approves in civil court the stipulation where she relinquishes the rest of the dogs. Hope and will continue to advocate for these animals to be placed with safe adopters, excuse me.
All right. And you always keep hope alive until otherwise. That Marshmallow could potentially still be out there somewhere. We just don't know.
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for joining us. This was a great conversation to bring people up to date on the Sarah Smolak case. And Michele Walsh from AMA Animal Rescue, thank you specifically for blowing this case wide open and exposing Sarah Smolak for who she is. So we appreciate you very much.
We couldn't do it without you guys. Desmond's Army is a force to be reckoned with. And thank you for everything that you guys do. And thank you for your incredible, incredible support and action, very decisive actions in this case that helped us get to where we are today. And I do hope we find out someday what happened to Marshmallow. But if we don't, certainly for Marshmallow, not for it not to have been in vain and for there to be accountability, right?
Well, thank you, Michele. I mean, you have been a force to be reckoned with. And one good thing that's come out of it is I've gotten a new friend.
Definitely,
So-
Zilla. Definitely, definitely. Always and forever. And thank you guys so much.
And I appreciate everything you've done. You have done the reports you've written you should be an attorney.
Thanks for everything. And I hope maybe we'll come back here another time and we
Yes.
can talk about hopefully some great resolutions with this case. And who knows, maybe we will find out what happened to Marshmallow.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you both very, very much. And we want to thank all of you out there for joining us for episode 5 of the Desmond's Army podcast. Again, you can find all our episodes streaming on demand on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Email us anytime at desmondspodcast@gmail.com. That's desmondspodcast@gmail.com. And we will certainly keep you up to date as there are new developments in the Sarah Smolak case. Thank you again. We appreciate you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Matt.